All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are going to tackle something that, let's be honest, is a constant in every single workplace: change. I mean, whether you're rolling out new software, you're restructuring a team, shifting the entire company's strategy, you know the hardest part is getting people on board. So how do you actually do it right? Let's get into it.
Does this look familiar? That frantic feeling of just trying to stay one step ahead of a domino effect you didn't even start? Yeah, that is the stress of badly managed change. But it really doesn't have to be that way.
Because here's the absolute truth. Change is gonna happen. It's just a fundamental part of how organizations work and grow. So the real difference between success and, well, failure, it isn't if you're gonna face change, it's how you guide your people through it.
So how do we do that? Well, thankfully, there's a brilliantly simple and really powerful model that breaks this whole complex, messy process down into a framework that you can actually use. So, we're going to be using social psychologist Kurt Lewin's classic three-step model. It's just elegant, it's intuitive, and you know what? It works. Unfreeze, change, and refreeze. That is our roadmap for the rest of this explainer.
And here is the metaphor that makes this whole thing click. Lewin saw all those organizational habits and processes like a block of ice, right? You can't just smash it into a new shape. No, first you have to melt it. That's the unfreezing. Then you pour that water into a brand new mold. That's the change part. And finally, you freeze it solid in its new form. That's refreezing. Simple, right?
Okay, so let's start with that critical first step, unfreezing. This is all about preparation. It's about creating the motivation, the need for change, by kind of disrupting that comfortable, this is how we've always done it mindset.
And look, this need to unfreeze, it doesn't just come out of nowhere. It's driven by very real pressures. On the outside, it could be new tech, changing markets, you name it. And internally, it could be a new strategy, or even just different attitudes bubbling up within the team. The first job of any leader is to make these forces totally clear to everyone.
So, in Lewin's model, these pressures are what we call driving forces. They're all the things pushing for the change, the things creating that urgency and really highlighting why staying put is just not an option anymore.
But of course, there's always a counterpressure, right? And these are the restraining forces. That's the inertia, the fear, the habits that are constantly pulling the organization back to the old way of doing things. This is where resistance lives.
And this image, this tug of war, perfectly illustrates that core dynamic. See, managing change is just like this. Now, the obvious move is to just strengthen your side, right? Push harder with the driving forces. But here's the crucial insight. Just pushing harder often makes the other side dig in their heels and pull back even harder. The more effective, kind of counterintuitive strategy is often to focus on weakening their side, addressing those fears and removing the obstacles.
So why do those restraining forces even exist? Well, it's not because people are just being difficult. It's because change creates uncertainty. People are comfortable with their habits. They worry about losing status or even their job. And sometimes they genuinely believe that change is a terrible idea for the company. The key to unfreezing is acknowledging that these fears are legitimate.
Okay, so you've successfully unfrozen the old ways and people are ready for something new. Now you enter phase 2. This is the transition itself. It's the messy, uncertain, and frankly often emotional middle part of the journey. Let's take a look at what that actually feels like.
This graph is so important because it shows that change is never a straight line from A to B. As people let go of the old, their self-esteem and their confidence often take a nosedive. They might go through denial, confusion, maybe even frustration before they finally start to accept the new reality and build up that new confidence. As a leader, your whole job is to guide them through this valley.
So how do you actually guide them? Well, you give them the tools they need. This means training for new skills, constant communication to kill that uncertainty, and real opportunities for people to participate in the process. You can't just announce a change and walk away. You have to support them through it, celebrating those small victories along the way to build some real momentum.
So, you've made it through the messy middle. The new system is in place. Awesome. But your work is not done. The final, and you could argue the most critical phase, is making sure the change actually sticks. This is refreezing.
See, refreezing is all about locking in that new state so the organization doesn't just slide back into its old comfy habits. And you do this by anchoring the change in your formal systems. Things like new policies, reward systems, performance reviews.
It's about making the new way the easy way and the celebrated way to get things done.
So that's the three-step model for the whole process. But let's zoom back in for a second on that really critical unfreezing stage. How do you actually weaken those restraining forces we talked about? Let's look at a practical toolkit for managing resistance.
Okay, this table is pure gold. It shows there's no single best way to handle resistance. The right strategy depends completely on the situation. If resistance is coming from misunderstanding, you educate and communicate. If it's coming from fear, you facilitate and support. If you need buy-in from a really powerful group, yeah, you might need to negotiate. Just notice how every approach has its pros and cons. The real art of leadership is picking the right tool for the job.
And that really brings us to the core mindset of all of this. This quote from Socrates, it just perfectly captures the spirit of what effective change leadership is all about. It's not about fighting the past. It's about inspiring people with a vision of the future and then giving them the tools and the support they need to build it together.
So, ultimately, with this unfreeze, change, and refreeze model, you have a clear, actionable framework to turn resistance into resolution and turn confusion into clarity. So the only question left is, what change are you going to lead?